friends, and welcome to the Happy Hour Jamie Ivey podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm so glad that you're here. Every week, I invite a girlfriend to join me on the show, and we chat about the big things in life, the little things in life, and everything in between. Vivian and I met this year at the IF Gathering, where we did some IF-equipped videos together, and we also both served on the Racial Reconciliation panel. Vivian and her husband have served with Cru, which is formerly Campus Crusade, for 25 years, and they currently work with the EPIC movement, which is the Asian American Ministry of Cru. Today, Vivian and I chat about her work with Cru and the EPIC movement, plus also her journey through breast cancer a couple of years ago. Her story is going to encourage you and inspire you, so sit back, and you just might need some tissues. I'm just saying from someone that needed some tissues during the recording. Today's show is sponsored by the She's Brave Conference. Nourish is a diverse community of women, and it was created to cultivate real relationships. Their She's Brave Conference is a weekend-long event where you can meet other women who value authenticity, fun, and community. This She's Brave Conference happens March 4th through 6th next year in 2016 in beautiful Uptown Charlotte. It will feature New York Times bestselling author Glennon Melton, great workshops, and a swag bag with all kinds of goodies including jewelry, workshop sessions, and other well-known writers, bloggers, and so much more. The cost for the whole She's Brave experience is only $250 if you register now. And just for Happy Hour listeners, you're going to receive a 15% discount with the code HAPPYHOUR. More information is available on their website, nourishclt.com. Guys, at the end of the show, be sure and listen to see how you can win a copy of Vivian's book, Warrior in Pink. Here is my conversation with Vivian.
Hey, Jamie.
Hi.
Hey. Good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I've been looking so forward to talking with you again.
This is so fun.
Yes. We should have done this so long ago.
Like in real person, in
Yes,
live, yes,
in human.
together, in human.
I know.
So tell me, where do you live?
I'm in Mission Viejo, California, Southern California, so between LA and San Diego.
So it's 10 a.m. there now.
Yep, it's 10 a.m.
Okay, well, welcome to the Happy Hour.
Hey, thanks. I'm so honored.
I'm so glad you're here. This is so fun. I'm so glad that we met. We met this year at the IF Gathering. And we were on the panel for the diversity panel on stage. That was fun.
Yes.
And then you and I also did some of the IF Equip videos together, which that's actually where we first met.
Yes, that's right.
They threw two strangers into a room and said, talk about Jesus for 3 minutes.
Yes, on various topics. Yes.
Yes.
It was great. I loved it. It was definitely meeting you was one of the highlights for me.
It was so fun. So tell everybody that's listening what you do in life.
Oh, well, aside from being a wife to my husband, Darren, of 24 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It is a big feat.
It's a big thing, yes.
Big thing. It's a big thing. And then we have 3 kids. Jonathan is 21, entering his senior year in college, and Michael is 18 and just started college, and Julia is 13 and she just started 8th grade. So
you have all of the different areas. I mean, you have one that just left high school, right?
Yes.
And one going into 8th middle school.
Yep.
Wow.
It is. I'm living that. So aside from that, my husband and I have been on staff with Cru, formerly Campus Crusade for Christ. We've been on staff for 26 years, and we currently serve on the EPIC movement, which is the Asian American Ministry of Cru. We're on the national executive team, and we serve with the field ministry, directing the field ministry.
Well, that sounds fun. What does that mean you actually do day to day?
Well, it means that we are in meetings.
Right.
Which I don't mind. I really do enjoy meetings. But we're thinking and planning and praying and believing God to reach Asian Americans who would then help reach the world, and primarily on the college campus, but also just really seeing that when someone comes to Christ, not only do their own lives change, their families' lives change, their community changes, everything changes, and so it's just thrilling to be a part of Change Lives. And so that's my day job, and then kind of on the side, I've been writing and speaking and doing fun things like the Happy Hour podcast.
The Happy Hour. This is everyone's fun thing to do.
Oh, for sure. So for sure. I actually went to my Starbucks. I have a Starbucks around the corner that I call my Starbucks.
Uh-huh.
And I was going to buy a pumpkin spice latte to share with you, to kind of bring in the fall season, but the line was too long and it didn't look like they had them yet. So,
And I don't have anything but water, so I wouldn't be sharing.
oh, okay. We'll have to plan that better next
I know.
time.
I've had my 1 cup of coffee. Well, I usually have 2 cups of coffee a day. I've already had one this morning at a meeting with a girlfriend. And then usually I would make one right before I started the show, and I'm out. How can you have a house out of coffee?
Oh, that's tragic.
It is. It's like close to the end of the world almost.
So sorry. I wish I could beam you over some of mine. I make my coffee in a huge Starbucks New York City cup. And then it's mostly dessert because it's like mostly half and half in sugar.
Okay.
With some coffee in it. And then I sprinkle nutmeg and cinnamon on top.
You do this at home?
I do this at home.
You make yourself a drink.
I do. I love it.
That's amazing. So I didn't start drinking coffee until I had kid number 2. It's like I would kind of socially drink coffee before, like if we were at an event, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take decaf, whatever. And then baby number 2, I was like, now I know why people do this. And I now feel like I just enjoy coffee. I like having something warm in my hands in the morning. And anyhow, I did Whole30. I know you've heard of it, right?
Yes.
So I did Whole30 in the spring, and it didn't I expected to lose like 75 pounds, whatever. But I didn't lose any weight.
Okay.
But anyhow, what it did do for me was a lot of people on Whole30, like if you drink coffee like you just described to me, that sounds delicious, but you can't have that on Whole30.
Right. Oh,
and
yeah.
so my coffee previously to Whole30 was coffee with I would call it my treat. Like I'd get vanilla flavored half and half or whatever, not half and half, but what's that, cream or whatever. And it was just like this special treat in the morning, and I cut all that out. And so now I am a black coffee drinker. 1 month without it, and I haven't gone back, and I'm just so proud of myself.
That is impressive. Yes, I'm like, wow.
I feel like a grown-up sometimes.
That is a grown-up kind of thing to do black coffee.
Because like your dad drinks black coffee,
Right.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like an adult over here.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question, and I hope that it is not insensitive. You have every right to tell me if it is.
Okay.
When you would tell me about your job with Crew, working with Asian Americans, specifically college students, to tell them about Jesus with the hope that it would not only change their life, but their family's life. Do you, here comes I hope it's not an insensitive question. Do you see that with your job that more with Asian Americans, does it have an opportunity to change the world within their families? Like, are you seeing a lot of people who may come to Christ but have families still in maybe their home country? Do you see that a lot?
Well, it's kind of varies because if you look at like Asian American history, there were Asian Americans who fought in the Civil War, but you just never read about it or see the pictures.
I never see that in pictures.
Right.
Right.
And like one of my dearest friends, his great grandparents helped build the railroad.
Wow.
So, he's 5th generation. So there are, Asian Americans who were here in the 1800s, so now you have your fifth generation, 6th generation growing up in the United States who are Asian American, who still identify as Asian American, who can trace their ancestry back to a country in Asia. And then you also simultaneously have a whole new group.
First, second generation.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. And so when you talk about Asian American, it's really broad. So the answer to your question is yes and no. So like my friend who the grandparents built the railroad, they were part of a church, back in the 1800s, that, he was pastoring and all of that. So there's a rich spiritual heritage in his family. But the majority of students that we work with, we work with Christians, but our objective is to, allow Jesus to be known on the college campus. So the most thrilling part of it is really seeing students that begin a relationship with God who had never heard. And that was what I grew up also in, non-Christian home, didn't have a Bible, didn't know Jesus apart from, something about Christmas and Santa Claus and, Easter was really more about the Easter bunny than so there's just not a context. So when we do share our faith, a lot of it is even the beginning of that there is a God.
Yeah.
and then moving toward that the Bible is the Word of God, that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that He died for us. And so it's really sometimes it takes a lot longer, but we see a lot of students that just are drawn to be a part of Epic. And then what's so great is that as they are with other believers, they see the difference, and over and over we see people come to Christ.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I always really, really enjoy hearing people's stories of faith, especially people who did not grow up in the church or grow up with even an inkling of understanding about God or Jesus, because I had the exact opposite story. Whereas I grew up in the church and would have called myself a believer since I was 8, but didn't really start following Jesus until I was about 21. But I always knew all the right answers. And so when I hear people say Easter didn't mean anything except for the Easter bunny and Jesus was maybe about Christmas, that is such a foreign concept to me, but it's such a great reminder that the world doesn't know Jesus.
Yeah, yeah.
And that there are people out there hurting that didn't grow up in my luxury of going to church.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you see a lot of that on college campuses.
Yes, increasingly more, I would say. And honestly, when what we usually come across, working with college students, is that sometimes those who are Christians, because they haven't really owned their own faith, they get to college and they kind of just go crazy.
For sure.
Yeah. and then they come around again. But it is that's why we love college ministry, because it really, those decisions that are made in those years really change the trajectory of the future and how they will, who they'll marry, how they'll live their lives, and
everything.
It's
crazy.
So,
it really is. It is. I feel like that with Aaron and I's parenting, I feel like it's been influenced. Aaron grew up as a son of a pastor, and I grew up in a Christian home. And so I think neither one of us truly owned our faith until we got to college, like you just said. And me, even until, a couple of years in, I don't even know if I was a believer, but I didn't start following Jesus until I was that old. And Aaron really didn't own his faith. And so as we parent, I feel like we're kind of swinging that pendulum a bit, a little bit. And like our kids are pastors' kids, but none of them have been baptized. We are so wanting them to own their faith.
Yeah.
That we're letting them journey that. And sometimes it's hard because I just want to tell them everything they need to know and then say Jesus, right? Right? You follow him, right? But we are so hands off about it that we show them God, we talk about him.
Yeah.
But we don't make them follow him in a sense, because you can't. Only God draws his people to him. So.
Yeah. And I think that I would agree. Our philosophy has been similar in that we were, I didn't want the kids to become inoculated to the Bible even. So, we didn't require the kids to read their Bibles. I really wanted them. I figured they will learn to read, and I would love for them to love the Bible because they love God and not feel like, oh yeah, I already heard that story.
Yeah.
And so, so that's probably been my biggest prayer is, to ask the Lord to have, bring them to places where they begin to own their own faith. And so it really has been fun to watch them, because I think in the same way with growing up in a church as a pastor's kid, being a missionary kid, there's also that same fishbowl kind of mentality. And we were just like, you know what, you don't feel like you have to pretend to be somebody that you're not. Yeah. So we didn't require them to have to do, a lot.
And now you have 2 boys in college.
Yeah, and what the fun thing is that they on their own sought out, the different fellowships that they're getting involved with. But like my middle son Michael, who just started, he actually dropped a class and picked up another class because he knew that a couple of the college ministries that he wanted to check out met that during that time. So he switched his schedule, and I just thought, way to go, I was really encouraged by that. He knew, he loves, all my kids went to public school. We loved that we could debrief with them about real life and have them have a variety of friends. And that was important to us. And we just felt like that was a good decision for our family. And so, he really has, the kids are going in realizing they're at their schools for a purpose bigger than just
schooling,
sports.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so fun. You have kids going to college. Mine just went to 6th grade, so we're still we're finding new things, and trying to prepare your kids for what lies ahead is one of the scariest things I can even think about, and what a privilege and honor that God gives us as parents, but it's also so scary.
Yes, and so humbling. I don't think that there's anything that has humbled me more besides being married. But being a mom, I feel like, really, I realized, each new season required me to extend grace to myself because I'd never been the mother of a preschooler.
Right.
I'd never been the mother of a teenager. And, so it's each time I've had to learn to give grace to myself because I have an expectation that somehow I would have, by osmosis or something, learned how to be a mom of a whatever.
Right.
And, it's been really humbling, and it's kept me very dependent.
Very. Yes, very dependent. That is for sure. Well, Vivian, when we met at IF, you gave me your book, and it is called Warrior in Pink, and the subtitle is A Story of Cancer, Community, and the God Who Comforts. And so IF was like February, and then I guess in March I went on a trip where I had a lot of time on an airplane, and I read your book and just loved it. It basically is just your story of finding out you have breast cancer, the journey through that with your community, and what God showed you through that. I mean, it was beautiful.
Aw,
it was so wonderful. Can I share with you a story about me real quick?
Yes, of course.
So I deal with worry and fear. And I am, I was about to say 100% different and better, but that's not true. I am, 75% better than I used to be. So it's still a struggle. It's something I fight. Well, I had an early mammogram, I guess last year sometime, just because of family history. So no big deal. So I go in and I had the mammogram, and they say, we're going to do an ultrasound today. And I'm like, this sounds weird. Like, I didn't sign up for an ultrasound today. So I go the same day right after the mammogram and get an ultrasound. And actually, I had to go to like a different building. I mean, I had to get in my car and leave and go. And so it was kind of like, this is weird. And as the tech is doing the ultrasound, she could have been having like a bad day. Her husband could have like told her bad news that morning. Something could have been off. But I felt like she was spending a lot of time in one area, and then she wasn't very friendly. And I left Vivian, and I laugh about it now. It's not funny at all, but I laugh at myself because I left that ultrasound with no doctor had said anything to me. They just said, we'll follow up. And I left, and I called my husband, and I said, I have breast cancer. And he's like, Jamie, what? And I was like, listen, she spent a lot of time here. She didn't smile at me. She didn't talk to me. She was just clicking away on her computer, and she kept asking me all these weird questions. And he was like, Jamie, no one has said that to you. And I'm like, and so I was in despair. I mean, like, I couldn't sleep that night. I was all worried. And no one had said that to me. And so I can only imagine when I was reading your book, this is the exact same scenario of how you found out you had breast cancer. I mean, and thankfully I don't, and everything was fine. I'm kind of like saying my weird worry, but as women, we go in and it is on our brain.
Yeah, that it's really true.
It's
and
there.
It seems to me, I don't know if it's because I went through it, but it just seems like it's even more prevalent, or younger women are being diagnosed more, or something. But it's startling to me.
Yeah.
How many? I think some statistic I read was 240,000 women will be diagnosed this year with breast cancer.
It's crazy. I mean, I have a friend right now. Her husband works at our church, and she has breast cancer. She's pregnant with her third child, and is walking through breast cancer. And is younger than me. I'm 37. Yeah. So, in the very beginning of your book, you and your girlfriends had gotten together, and someone was telling you a story about someone, and you said something that kind of set out the trajectory, not only for this book, obviously, but for your life. And you said, God, if I ever get news like this, I want to let people in. Let me let people in. And then 2 months later, you got probably the worst news you'll ever get. Is that correct to say?
Yeah.
So tell me, I just told you about my crazy story that wasn't even true. Tell me, because people that are listening, they probably know someone that's walked through this.
Right.
And if they don't, they probably will. What was it like that day when you found out that you had cancer?
Well, wow. Well, just to back up to that story. So the story happened in October, and what ended up happening was my friend had a friend who just always looked perfect, and she called her the Asian Martha Stewart because everything about her life was perfect. And this woman was diagnosed with breast cancer, and when people offered to help her, she refused because she just wanted to stay the strong one. She wanted to stay all put together. But as she went through this horrible cancer treatment, she could not hold her world together, and she was not a believer. And she tragically committed suicide. And so when I heard that story, it just stopped me. So I can still, I mean, you know how you have those moments in your life where it just stops and you can just go right back to that moment? And I, sitting here on my couch right now, I can go back to I can still smell the food court. I can still hear the sounds. But it was like God just kind of, showed me, it's like, you don't even know this woman, but you can totally relate of liking that, wanting to be the strong one and kind of refusing help. And that's what, that part of the story was the prayer, God, if anything like this ever happens, I purpose right here, right now, I will let people in. So for me, it was, I found a lump, went, my doctor, my primary care physician was a new one, she didn't know me very well, but she wasn't too worried. So she sent me to get a diagnostic mammogram just in case, which ended up leading to the ultrasound, which led to a core biopsy.
All in the same day, which I did not realize that they would do a biopsy in the same day.
Yes. So, and this was all on the Friday before school was out for Christmas break. So,
so
there
you
was
literally
Christmas
have I have an hour scheduled for a mammogram, and then I have a full day.
Oh yeah. It was like, this one's early out. This one has, and my daughter's food allergies, so I need to bring the special sugar cookies for this birthday party.
We all know this. Yes.
Right? Costco Christmas cards. And, we're trying to get everyone schedules a party in December. I don't know why, but, but so it was in the middle of that madness that this happened. And so before I even got the official diagnosis, that decision, that the story came back to me again, and the decision to let people in was before me. So I actually ended up writing an email to the 5 women that I would ask to be my bridesmaids if I had to marry Darren again.
We all know that those people,
right? Those are the, who were my 5. So I emailed them, and 3 of the 5 lived within 10 minutes of me. So I texted them.
So wait, you got home that night?
Yeah.
From all of this, and that's when you did the email?
Yeah. So I sent this email out and then realized that 3 of them lived within 10 minutes of me. So I texted them and said, hey, can you meet me at my Starbucks tomorrow? I just need to be. And so they knew, I'd known them a couple decades. So they knew that this was not normal for me to, reach out to ask for help. And what was so amazing, I ended up calling them the Awesome Threesome. But, Layla, Kelly, and Debbie, they knew how, they had gone through their own trials in their lives so that they knew not to try to talk me out of my feelings or, throw Bible verses my way or try to convince me that, I needed to trust God. I mean, they just knew how to sit with me and hold my feelings and just be with me. And that to me was one of the greatest gifts. And so that, I think, helped me to start being open to, what was ahead. So that was even before the call. Then the call came 3 days before Christmas, and, it never rains in Southern California. I think there's a song about that, but it never
sounds like there should be a song about that. Yeah.
So, but this particular weekend, it had been raining so hard that it was raining sideways. It was just so stormy. And we, of course, because of all the expectations of the holidays and everything, there's tension. And so Darren and I were fighting about something. I don't even remember what it was, but we just had this tension going on. And I was waiting for the phone call and waiting for the phone call. So I finally took the phone call in the garage in my car. I call that my office because sometimes
get away.
It's the only quiet place.
Exactly.
So I took the phone call, just there in my car, and the technician said, you have invasive lobular carcinoma, and I had never heard any of those 3 words, and I was just like, what is that? And so she explained, breast cancer. So after they had set up the appointment, I got the phone. Darren walked into the garage, and I think I was just in shock. But as soon as I opened my car door and got out, I just told him, I just broke down, just said, it's cancer. The doctor says I have cancer. So I was sobbing. And he just put his arms around me, and he just prayed for us in that moment. And we had these little windows in our garage, on our garage door. And when he had finished praying, it was just this sweet and tender moment, because at that moment, the clouds broke through and the sunbeam came right into our garage, right where we were standing. And it was just like the Lord was saying, I'm here and I'm with you and I'm going to be with you as you walk through this.
Yeah.
And it was pretty incredible.
And now I'm crying.
Oh.
I've read the story and I'm still crying. Oh, and
Oh.
so, I mean, you knew from the get-go that you had a man that was going to stand with you through this whole thing. But you guys didn't tell the kids right away, did you?
No, it was Christmas.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to spoil it for them or even for our immediate family. So we kind of had, just a small handful of friends that knew that could carry us through that time, but we told them after Christmas.
And how old were your kids at the time of this?
So Jonathan at that time had just turned 14. He was starting his first year of high school, and Michael was 11 in 6th grade, going into 6th grade, and Julia was 6, going into 1st grade.
Okay. So you had a house full of kids. I mean, in all different things.
Yeah.
Ministry, husband, and now this.
Mm-hmm.
So did you start treatment after the first of the year?
So it was like, I honestly, I was 42, and at that time I was running that was back in the day when I used to run. But I was running 2 or 3 miles every other day. Like I was as in shape as I had ever been,
Yeah.
So it just came out of nowhere for me, but I totally lost my train of thought.
What, you had surgery after the first of the year?
Oh,
Is
yes,
that what happened?
yes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So 42. I had rarely gone to the doctor even. So I went through a million. It felt like a million different appointments and visiting doctors, and then finally had my first surgery in January, and then the next 9 months I was in active treatment.
Chemo or radiation? I can't remember.
Both.
Okay.
Both. Yeah.
Okay.
And surgeries. Yeah.
And surgeries. So you mentioned something a while ago that I think was so interesting about your friends, about how they didn't throw Bible verses at you. They didn't tell you just need to trust God more, that they really just sat with you. Is that what you would encourage? Like, I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm thinking, the chances that a friend of mine walks through something tragic, and it may not be cancer, you can fill in the blank with whatever. What is my response to that? Like, I want to be the kind of friend like you just said. How can we be friends like that? What's your advice and encouragement for all of us to be that type of friend to our people?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. And I think, I think the intention always is that we want to help. We want to love well, we want to help. But there are certain things that aren't as helpful in a crisis moment. And I mean, honestly, for me, I used to, before I went through cancer, I used to just say, hey, call me anytime. And I really meant that. If you need anything, just call me. And after being on the receiving end of that, I realized, what? I know that person really cares about me and loves me, but there's nothing in me that will actually call this person. So I appreciate the invitation, but it wasn't really, in the end, very helpful.
Gotcha.
So I would say, being on a very practical level, it was more helpful when, one friend would say, hey, can I pick your son up from football practice for you and just bring him home? It's like, yes, that would be
just
great.
Throwing stuff out there instead of waiting for you to come up. Because it's almost like you're asking the person who is in this situation that is struggling to come up with ways that people can help her.
Right, exactly. And so, this is where the beauty of having the awesome threesome was that I was able to process with them. And so going back to just even being with someone, grieving, whether they've lost someone they've loved, or they've lost their job, or they've lost it's grief regardless of the circumstances.
What it is, right.
And it really is just the being there, I think, is a gift. And not having to even have to say anything, which even just stating that, I don't even know what to say, but I just want you to know that I'm here and I love you. That is the gift of your presence, is one of the greatest presents. I would say, because there's, I was a missionary, still I'm a missionary, but at that time, it's like I've been teaching Bible study. I know the Bible pretty well. I didn't need. I needed to be able to process through my emotions in a safe environment.
Yeah.
And there were people that really were well-meaning, but they were giving unsolicited advice. So, sending me recipes for,
healing.
15, if you buy these apples that were grown in the Amazon. It'll
Yeah.
cure you of cancer. And again, well-meaning,
For sure.
but they really weren't very helpful for me. And again, and the other piece I'd say, Jamie, is that each person's journey is different. And so I think that there's just no right way to do cancer. So I think that that's the other piece, that, everyone walks through treatment differently. They respond differently. They respond to God differently. And I think that, really there's just not a one way to do it. So I still think it's better to, maybe still be there and maybe accidentally say something that's not as encouraging, but hopefully have the type of relationship where you can say, I'm not, I'm wanting to be sensitive to you, but I'm feeling some of these things. Just being honest and trying to either, it's better than to avoid. And, the interesting thing, now that I'm thinking about it, was that there were some people that I thought would be there for me, but they weren't. And then unexpected people I didn't expect were there for me. And so I just find that really interesting, because I do believe that when people live with unprocessed grief, it just ends up surfacing again. So I felt like my own cancer battle was bumping up against their unresolved, whether they had relatives who had died of cancer or whatever, but it just kind of poked at that tender part in their lives. So some of them just disappeared.
Because they couldn't handle going through what they'd already been through.
Yeah.
You're not the first person I've heard say that when tragedy struck, or they went through some kind of form of grief or something like this, that the people that they thought would be there weren't, and the people that they never expected to be there were. I think when I think about myself and wanting to help friends and be for people, I think what you just said is really encouraging, because I think what keeps so many people from doing anything is because we just don't know what to say. And so we feel like, well, once I get in front of them, well, what do I do? That's awkward. What am I supposed to say? And so I feel like hearing you say you don't have to say anything is encouraging,
Yeah.
It's really encouraging, because it takes that pressure off.
Yeah. And I would say too that, there was a huge flood of concern. I mean, overwhelming. Like, we stopped answering our phone at one point, because it was just like, we were telling the same story
right
more times. It was just exhausting, but usually if a person's going through an extensive treatment, I mean, it was months and months and months. And so, if you have a close friend who's going through it, just stick in your phone a reminder to, check in like 3 months from now.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. And I think that that's true again with people who are grieving. You can get a whole bunch of support at the front end, but as you continue, there's still more journey. So
it is. And because, I mean, the reality, and it is sad, but it is a reality. Other people's lives just go on. I mean, I look back on when we were going through some hard times, and I remember thinking, everyone's still waking up and watching Good Morning America. Like, everyone is still going to lunch. Everyone is still having happy hour.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and so it's a hard place to be too when you're on, but that's a good word for us to remember these people 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road.
Yeah.
I do something. I've had a couple of girlfriends who have lost parents, and I keep the date on my calendar, and it's a reoccurring event, and it just helps me every year to tell them, hey, I remember your loss, and I texted a girlfriend just this summer to say, hey, I know this is a hard week, and I love you, and one day we get to see your dad again. And she just said that really meant a lot that you remembered. And so it's small things like that can really make a big difference. Hey guys, before we get back to my conversation with Vivian, I wanted to let you know about a way that you could totally help out the happy hour. iTunes reviews are like manna from heaven to podcasts. So if you haven't already, go to jamieivey.com/iTunes and give the show a rating or review. Here's a recent review from NY Jules. She says this: I'm so happy that I found Jamie Ivey. I'm a road warrior and spend a lot of time on planes, trains, and automobiles. I love listening to Jamie and her friends. I'm learning so much about the wonderful causes that many of her guests advocate. Thanks to this podcast, I have also added some great reads to my reading list, found the best pie in Austin, and discovered the Gilmore Girls. This podcast is super fun, informative, and inspirational. Listening to this podcast is definitely one of the top 3 things I'm loving right now. Thank you so much for putting me in your top 3 things. Guys, I love hearing your thoughts on the show. It's a great affirmation for the show and for myself, but even more, Sharing that in review form, it actually helps more people find the happy hour. And that's what we want. We want more people at the happy hour. So remember, that's jamieivey.com/iTunes. Give it a rating, leave a review, and you'll have my eternal gratefulness. Okay, back to the show with Vivian and I. What do you say? Would you be as bold to say that your journey through this would not have been the same without your people around you?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that there is definitely a part of this that is God's perfect timing. Because I think about how I would have responded had it been 5 years earlier. And I think I would have been like the Asian Martha Stewart, where it'd be like, no, I don't want to put anybody out.
Really? Okay.
I just don't want to, I just don't want to be a bother to anyone. Like that kind of a approach would have been my lead foot. And so I felt like God had, taken me through other difficulties that brought me to a place of really valuing and also, not only just valuing, but actually having action steps that would change the outcome. So yes, I really do believe that there was some growing on the insides that God had been doing prior to even the diagnosis that helped me. And and honestly, we didn't do everything like whoop-de-doo. And I didn't write the book, with wanting to have this little bow on the end and a Bible verse to wrap everything up. And I just wanted to be kind of real and raw about it. There were times it was just awful, and there's just no way around awful. And no matter how great God is, he was still allowing me to feel awful, and being able to hold that intention is something that I'm still learning to do.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed reading your journey, and I hate that it has to be your journey, but I believe that God uses that for His glory. I mean, for sure, you get to bring Him glory through this. But I taught a retreat last spring, and I was teaching on 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10, when Paul's talking about, the thorn in his flesh, and, that he would ask God to remove it, and he didn't, and it was for his glory, those kind of things. And it reminded me of a chapter in your book, and it must have been, I don't know if it was like fresh on my mind or whatever, but I'm going to read a little bit from your book, if that's okay.
Sure.
You talk a lot about just the struggle with the treatment. You had some very miserable days, sickness, nausea, tired, all that kind of stuff. So this is entitled Kitchen Camping. And this, not only, I might not make it through without crying, because it made me cry. And I read it again this morning, and I already cried. And so here we go.
Jamie, I wish I could hug you.
Here's what you said. You said, tired of being in our bedroom staring at the ceilings, I began to migrate to new places to sleep. After another round of chemo, I found myself knocked out sleeping on the couch in the TV room. Around 2:30 a.m., the predictable pain peaked. I thought I'd done a good job of layering my pain and nausea meds, but I found myself unsuccessful. I wandered into the kitchen to get some water and then slid down to the floor. Darren came into the kitchen and looked at me sitting on the floor, look, I'm already about to cry, leaning up against the cabinets by the sink. I looked up, assaulted by nausea, battling pain in my bones from my first vertebrae to my kneecaps. I didn't want to move at all. I'm not doing very well, you said. He sat down next to me on the kitchen floor. He said nothing. Leaning up against his arm was enough. Look, I cannot even make it. After sitting for a long, long time on the kitchen floor in silence, Darren asked, do you want to stay in the kitchen? I nodded. He left the room. I heard the sound of a closet door open. I closed my eyes, hoping it would quell the nausea. When I opened them again, Darren stood at the doorway to the kitchen, arms full of sleeping bags and pillows. I watched as he said, oh my gosh, I am like a mess. I watched as he set up camp for us. After I climbed into my sleeping bag, Darren turned out the light. As I lay on the hard white tiles of the kitchen floor in the dark next to Darren, his broad chest breathing of deep sleep, I fell into a fitful sleep wondering, how much more can I take? As the day streamed in through the kitchen windows, I knew the battle still raged on. I knew chemo had more to take from me and to teach me, but I also knew that I'd make it. Because I had Darren, because my children pulled for me, because our church family tangibly loved us, because people prayed for me. And then the last paragraph is one that I just starred all over. It said, and all of that told me that no matter what chemo took from me, it had given me far more. Life, yes, but also blessings I would never had known or allowed myself to accept without what I struggled through. And that you're crying and it's your story.
I know.
I'm crying and it's the third time I've read it. But I started that last part because that really, really spoke to me because you said chemo was giving you life for sure. It was killing the cancer. It was doing that. But you said that it was giving you more than you would have ever known had you not gone through it. Mm-hmm. Is that a hard reality to put your mind around?
Yes.
And how did you get there? Because that's not those aren't easy words to say, that because of my cancer, God, you have moved in me and shown me these things. Because basically you're saying, without this, I wouldn't be who I am. Mm-hmm. And I believe in a sovereign God. I believe that God is in control of things. And so I believe that he changes us and he moves us through all sorts of things. So tell me, how is it that you got your brain around that?
Well, I think there are choices big choices and little choices. So big choices would be a decision to surrender and yield our lives fully to the Lordship of Jesus. That's a big decision, mm-hmm. and that changes everything, because when he is in the driver's seat, when he is the king, when he is number one in our lives are not our own. And so there's a surrenderedness that leads us to being willing to go anywhere, do anything, say anything, give anything. That changes everything in a believer's life. Yeah. So that to me is probably what I am most passionate about, as far as helping believers, learn the significance of that. Because when that decision takes place, the Holy Spirit is then able to empower us. We can walk in the power of the Holy Spirit, and because his power is unlimited, there's just no telling what can happen when a life is surrendered like that. So that's, to me, a big decision, mm-hmm. which is part of getting our minds around it. Is like, really, our lives are not our own. And can I lean into God and trust him, even when my circumstances look so bleak? Mm-hmm. And then I think that there are just the little decisions, which would include, and maybe they're not little, but compared to that first one, it seems littler, but there are little decisions that we make to decide, like, our attitude on things. So it's not happy talk so much, as much as is really a choice to, mm-hmm. Really, I'm going to choose to be honest with my feelings. Mm-hmm. I'm going to choose to, have that difficult conversation. I'm going to choose, so there's all those little decisions that also help us wrap our mind around the sovereignty of God. Because I see a lot of Christians that stay stuck in a trial. Like, so they could have had something happen to them in their lives, in their teenage years, mm-hmm. or whatever, and now they're in their 30s, but they're still living back there, because mm-hmm. they never forgave, mm-hmm. they never let go, they never
accepted forgiveness,
mm-hmm. exactly,
or grace from God,
exactly. And so I think that those are those big decisions, little decisions that help us to move into when life doesn't make sense. And honestly, I think the older we get, the more life doesn't make sense.
Yes.
And I think, and kind of like in our little if gathering thing, mm-hmm. the if equip thing, we just don't, in North America, we don't do very well with pain. And so we always think there's something wrong if we are experiencing pain. So it's either what's wrong with me, like what did I do that would deserve this, or mm-hmm. what's wrong with God, he's so,
why would he do this?
Yes, he's such a mean and hard, rather than realizing his tenderness and his, mm-hmm. his sovereignty and really having a picture of his character, mm-hmm. more accurate.
Yeah.
So,
how did this, as a mom, how did you walk through this with your kids? Like, how did you help them have this perspective? Or did they? I don't know.
It was, the kids were definitely in different seasons of life. So we kind of decided to just be really honest with them too. Like, we didn't want them to have to wonder what was going on. So it's almost like sex education, where you just use the right words.
Age appropriate,
Age appropriate, but you use the right terms, and so that the kids are familiar with things. So we didn't try to, hide things from the kids. We just told them what we knew, mm-hmm. and then we were, we try to be consistent with checking in. But the interesting thing is, it's still, this is 6 years out now. I'm still hearing stories from my kids about how that time was, that
Wow.
it's like we're still processing it.
Well, and you
It's
had kids on such different levels. I mean, your youngest was
mhm.
6 and your oldest, what'd you say, 14?
14, yeah,
Those are
yeah.
big difference in even like
Yes.
maturity and understanding and life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think, for us, it's, we'd rather have it just be more just real and not, um, we wanted to keep their lives as normal as possible,
Mm-hmm.
which is why community was such a huge piece of it. So we didn't want them to have to pull out of soccer and football and marching band, and we wanted them to stay involved with the things that they enjoyed.
Yeah.
And so it really then did take, an army of people that would pick them up and drop them off and, all of that.
Right.
So,
I often wonder this when people are diagnosed with any kind of disease. We're speaking of you with breast cancer. Did you and Darren ever have to have those hard conversations of what if this doesn't end the way we would want it to end?
hmm, that's a really good question. I don't think we actually went
You didn't
there.
go there. That was,
We
yeah,
didn't go there because we didn't need to go there. And to me, it would have been expending a lot of emotional energy that I had to save up just to show up for the next treatment.
right.
So I think it was hard enough to just kind of like, okay, in 3 weeks, I've got to gear up again and go to get another round of chemo. And, so it's kind of like if I don't know if you've ever run before, but like
I
whenever,
used to be a runner, I like to call
hey, me
myself.
too.
Yes.
So back in the day when I
Back in the
used to
day,
run,
yes.
if I got to a hill, it wasn't helpful for me to like look at the top of the hill. I just kind of had to look down and just kind of get one foot in front of the other to kind
Yeah.
of make it. And
Uh-huh.
then after a while, I got to the top of the hill, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how we faced this thing. So we didn't go there. Um, yeah, we just didn't have even space to go there. Um, but I think that some people probably do, and
Yeah.
I think that's where, again, that surrendering, over and over and processing is such an important part
Yeah.
of, yeah. So there's more than just the physical treatment. There's emotional, spiritual, relational. There's just turmoil going
I would
on all
imagine.
levels.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Vivian, your book, Warrior in Pink, is just beautiful. And I think we're going to give 5 away. And we'll do that on Instagram. And if you guys can follow me and I'll tell you how. But I encourage you all to go get this book. Um, it's not even, I loved it. And I'm not walking with anyone with cancer right now in my life. So it's not that like, oh, get this if your mom has cancer. It's a book for everybody. So
Mm.
really, really, really great. I highly recommend it. Okay, so now we'll move on from serious
Okay.
to funny. First of all, I'm going to ask you what you're loving, but I have to say this too. I don't know if you taught me this, but I saw on your Facebook recently that you had, or it might have been yesterday or something, that you had a picture of like a chocolate box and there was like one chocolate left and you
Yes.
said, so Asian.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember if you're the one that taught me this, but I didn't know. So you need to teach everyone that's listening that's not Asian is
Yes. Yes.
that the respectable and common thing when you're at a meal is that nobody takes the last bite. No one takes the last serving. Correct?
Yes, correct. You know what? It was one of those interviews that I don't think they've shown yet that we did with Latasha.
Okay, good. So it was
So
recorded.
yes, it was
Okay.
recorded. So
Okay.
yes, so when you're at a Chinese banquet, there's always like one shrimp left on the platter, and there's one. Yeah, so it is. So in Asian culture, one of the greatest values is if it's very community oriented rather than individualistic. So one of the ways that that's demonstrated is that it's not about me. So I'm not going to take the last piece in case someone else would want to.
Yes.
So that's kind of this deference that's shown. But it's so hilarious because when you're at like a big youth event with, a bunch of Asian kids, there's always like one slice of pizza left.
That is so funny. My kids are fighting over the last piece and they're like, it's mine.
So, yes. So once you're made aware of that, if you go to an Asian event or you're with other Asians, you'll see
You'll notice it.
you'll notice it. And that's part of the awareness. So
That is so fun. I
it was so
loved it. It
funny
made
you
me
remembered
laugh because
that.
I remember learning that. I was like, oh, I remember. She taught me that.
Yes, yes. And that's why it's so great to have friends from different backgrounds and different
Yes.
cultures and just enriches our lives to see life a little different.
So does. So much so. Okay, so I always ask my guests, what are three things that you're loving?
Yes, I love that question, and it was fun to think about. Okay, so one of the really fun things is that I've just been invited to be a full-time writer with, or an official writer with She Reads Truth.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know it's fun and it's also exciting,
I
and
love everything they do.
I do too. I do too, and it's been so fun to work with them. So I've been a guest writer for them for the last several months, and then just recently said yes
So
to
what does
being.
that look like for you? What will you be doing more of?
So I'll just be doing more writing. So,
Okay.
so that has been so great to have a place to just be in the scriptures with an incredible group of women.
Yeah.
And I love that. So that's one thing I'm excited about.
Okay.
The other thing that we're starting to do, which I don't know if this is a whole 30 something, but in our little family, I could not give up, the my coffee dessert,
Your coffee dessert.
whatever that is. But we are starting to juice. Like,
Mmm.
so we're juicing, and that's a whole nother thing. So, we've got the juicer, and we're throwing everything into the juicer. So, like
I
last night,
love
there was
that.
all sorts of combinations of like pineapple and beets, and we even tried like red cabbage last night, just to
Mm.
kale, and so it just feels healthy. And
It's totally healthy. Not just feel healthy. Vivian, you're onto something.
so anyway, we dusted off our juicer, and we've been juicing pretty regular. I mean, almost daily, and that's been a
That's
really
a
fun
really
thing.
good, healthy thing to do as well.
Yeah. So that's really one thing, and so kind of in line with that as well is that I got a Fitbit.
Oh, is that the watch thing?
Yeah, it's like it counts how many steps you have. And
Yes.
so the thing that's been fun about it for me, Jamie, is that, I'm less resentful of those times when I forget something in the other room.
And you have to go get
Because,
it?
right, because now I can like get points, or like it tracks every step. So it's like, oh, it's okay if I have to go all the way back across
It's
the grocery store
okay.
to go get the na, because I'm going to get more steps. And I'm always so sad when I don't get my steps in.
So are you trying to reach a goal every day? Is that how it works?
Okay, so if you hit 10,000 steps, the little Fitbit thing like vibrates and flashes.
So that's what you're looking for.
For that. So it's just,
So what's an average day of steps?
well, I think an average day, they say, whoever they
Whoever
are,
they is, yeah.
they feed the Fitbit folks, I don't
Uh-huh.
know. I think that they say like it's healthy to take 10,000 steps. So that's where the 10,000
Okay.
comes in. That's like, that means I need to walk the dog.
Oh, that's not just like
So, like, think regular life, just running around. I think you could probably do 4,000 steps, but
okay.
you actually have to add, like, maybe walk the dog or take a longer walk around the block or something to
Gotcha.
hit the 10, or run through an airport. That works really well.
That works really well, I'm sure. Oh, I lately am not getting 10,000 steps and I know it because I'm sitting at my desk.
Uh-huh. I hear you. I do that with the writing and stuff. I'm at my
Yes.
desk a lot too, and I feel it. So that's why the Fitbit thing has kind of been a fun thing. And I actually, there are communities, and you can like, put teams against one another and
Oh,
blah
now
blah.
I do like a good competition. So,
So yeah, so I haven't ever ventured into that. It's just kind of my own little thing, but it syncs with my phone, so I
okay.
can check how many steps I'm taking, and
That's good.
yeah, so that's been a fun thing. It's been
That's
fun in a non-pressure kind of way because, I mean, really walking is about the extent of my exercise
I hear
regime.
ya. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So do you not run anymore?
You know what? I don't.
Is it a medical thing or just a
Oh no,
okay.
it's just a why it's honestly, I never enjoyed running, but I always was glad that I did it when I finished.
For sure. Yes.
And so I think that it took so long to get to a point where I could run. So
Yeah.
I need a goal. So if I had a friend who said, "Hey,
You want to
let's
train
go
for this?
train for a 5K or
Yeah.
something," I would be down for that.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably get me going. But in and of myself, I know that I'm not in, intrinsically motivated.
Right. I used to training always helps. I've ran a handful of halves. And so with a goal, it's like I
Mhm.
have to get these miles in or I'm going to die come,
Right.
running 13 miles. And then I have a really bad back, so I can't run anymore. And I almost didn't realize how much I loved it until they said you shouldn't do it. And then I was
Uh,
like, wait, no, I want to
yeah.
do this. I love this.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Oh, that's a bummer when you love something
I
and then
do
you
love
can't.
it. And it was actually like an exercise that I could do and enjoyed, and you don't have to have a gym membership and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah. But
Yeah.
anyhow, so I did
Yeah.
my walking today on the treadmill at the gym.
Oh, you go, girl.
But I
So
do,
see, I bet you if you had that Fitbit,
yep, it would have
somewhere
told me how
along the
many
way it would have,
steps.
yeah. And
Yeah,
then you would have had the little lights go off
I
and it
know.
would vibrate on your
Yeah,
arm.
and then
So
I would have thought like it was like my pager for dinner because you know how they give you those pagers when your food's
yes.
ready. Maybe I need that because that like makes me happy when that goes off. Maybe the Fitbit would make me happy too.
Yeah, well, it definitely makes me less upset about like having to go back to my
Yes,
room
yes,
or back into the house to get the thing that I forgot or the piece
yeah.
of paper. So I'm it's changed my attitude significantly.
Oh, so what are you reading right now?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I am working on a master's degree in Bible exposition at Talbot Seminary.
Wow.
So, and so I'm taking a class at a time. So when I got that question, I was thinking, well, I'm reading The Person of Christ by Donald MacLeod,
Uh-huh.
Contours of Christian Theology, and I am reading J.I. Packer's Keep in His Step with the Spirit and One with Christ by Johnston. So I'm reading some heady stuff
Very
for
heady.
this theology class. I don't know if I understand much of it, but no, I love being able to be formally in an environment where I'm being challenged in my thinking, and
Yes. Yeah.
it's been a blast. But I also have downloaded. I keep downloading, books on my Kindle, which is actually my iPad, but I have the Kindle app, and so it just seems like if you're on Twitter, there's always like these great deals, like
Uh-huh.
this book is only 99 cents. Like I
Yeah.
could do that.
And then before you
So
know it, you have like 15 books to read.
I
Yeah.
know. So I have a whole bunch of great books that I'll start on an airplane ride, but then I get distracted, and so I don't really finish. But I did start just this week, the Gifts of Imperfection by
Mm.
Brene Brown.
Okay. I've never read any of her books. I'm
I
embarrassed to
haven't
say.
either.
Okay. I have a lot of
So,
friends that have. So,
yeah, I had never read any of her books either, and I just happened. I think it was one of those. Hey, it's like really inexpensive, so I had
yeah.
downloaded it at some point. I don't even remember when, but her intro is basically her TED talk on vulnerability,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and I loved that talk. Her TED talk was where I first heard her,
Yeah.
and so I'm curious about learning more about wholehearted living, and it just feels like it's a very applicable book right now in my life, just to learn to embrace imperfection and
Yeah.
you
Well,
know
love that.
yeah. So that's
I'm going to
one.
have to pick up a book of hers because I've never read one, but
Yeah, I think she just has a new
a brand
one.
new one. Yeah.
Just came out. So
And we're recording this weekend of September. So it just came out now. So, yeah.
mhm, yeah. So
Oh, okay. Vivian, this has been so much fun chatting with you, even if I cried through some of it.
oh, I cried too.
Yes, but I just am so proud of you for sharing your story and for the vulnerability that you brought and the bravery that shines through on those pages. So thanks for writing that, and thanks for sharing, and thanks for telling people about Jesus. Thanks for everything you do.
Oh, well, thank you for reading and your encouragement, and I just love that I can call you friend.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, well, thank you for being on the happy hour.
Thanks.
Guys, I loved my conversation with Vivian. I want you to keep a lookout over on my Instagram account, which is just at Jamie Ivey, for how you can win a copy of her book, Warrior in Pink, which I know that you're going to love if you didn't tell how much I loved it from our show today. Again, just follow me on Instagram at Jamie Ivey, and I'll tell you how you can win a book in a couple of days. Remember, everything that we chatted about today, I'm going to throw it up on my website, jamieivey.com. It's just an easy way for you to find everything we talked about. Find me on Twitter, find me on Instagram or Facebook, and share something you love from this episode. I really love conversating. I just made that word up. I really love chatting with you guys about the show. Thanks for listening. You're the reason I do the show. This past weekend I was at a Loom, and it was so wonderful to meet some of you in person. So if you came up and said you love the show, I am so eternally grateful to you. Next week, my guest is my friend Jillian Lauren, who happens to be one of my favorite authors and also an adopted mom like me. She describes her life this way. Are you ready? She says, a former member of a harem to a member of the PTA. I kid you not, you heard me right, I said harem. Join us next week for her story and all her thoughts on adoption. Guys, enjoy your week. Share the show with a girlfriend and have a happy hour with a friend. And I will see you guys next week with my friend Jillian Lauren.